Again, that's just offshore here. So what happens as that wave continues to build, you run out of ground here, and because of the bathymetry of the shore there, very shallow there, we're seeing you continue to get that wave height becoming higher and higher. Rosemary, 6.8 in just the last few minutes has hit offshore of Honshu. That in itself would be a major earthquake here. That in itself could actually generate another tsunami here, so we'll have to watch things closely. Again, threat for Japan is not over. As we know, the initial tsunami wave is not the only one that hits. Sometimes the secondary or even the third one that comes in is actually higher and is worse here. So the threat is going to be ongoing here across Japan. And then we have the watches, of course, for the Philippines, Marshall Islands. We have watches for Johnston Island, Solomon Islands, Kiribati, and Hawaii as well. Let me know what you guys want to do, but what I eventually want to do, if you'll allow me, is actually get into the arrival times, because we're not just telling a story that happened ago, right?
Yeah,
this is
let's
do it, because I mean this is
because there's people watching right across the globe who want to know all of that.
This is what people want to know, and I tell you, I'm going to do it in GMT time because that is what I have here. I'm not going to be able to convert that on the fly for you if you're local, but if you're watching us from Taiwan, the tsunami arrives at 9:30 GMT. That is not much time for folks to get off shore here and get into higher ground. Philippines, tsunami arrives at 9:55 GMT. Marshall Islands, tsunami arrives at 10:13 GMT. Indonesia, tsunami arrives at 10:49 GMT. Papua New Guinea at 11:24 GMT. And when we talk about Kiribati, it arrives at 12:28 GMT. Those are the initial arrival times of the first tsunami wave. There could be additional waves, and if you're watching us from places that are under a watch and I didn't name you, that is because you have several hours to prepare yourselves, and we'll continue to update this list as that initial wave continues to get closer. Rosemary.
Ivan, we're looking at these pictures. We can see something is ablaze there on the ground as this very strange wave of mud and debris with boats included and cars and all sorts of things. It's when you see something like this, Ivan, unfold before your very eyes that you get an idea of there's nowhere to run when you have something like that coming so fast toward you. And of course, you know, it appears to be fairly slow when you're looking aerially, but if you're on the ground and that is moving at such a fast speed, you can see the boat there.
Just unbelievable pictures. There's a building or a couple of buildings that are on fire and are moving with the tsunami. That is just something you just never seen before, and there's a pretty big vessel there getting pushed to shore. The one good thing that I'm seeing here, there are homes now in the way, but generally, if you've noticed, Rosemary, this has been through farmland here. There's that fire that I've been talking about, a moving blaze along the tsunami. Just unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, and Ivan, I'm getting word there is some Nat sound here. Let's just pause for a moment, just have a listen.
Live coverage in the Sendai area, Miyagi Prefecture, north of Japan. For those of you who have just tuned in to NHK World, a major earthquake hit Japan Friday afternoon about an hour and 10 minutes ago. Japan's meteorological agency says the quake measured magnitude 8.4. It has revised it upwards to 8.4. The agency has issued a tsunami warning for Japan's Pacific coast. In northeastern Japan's Iwate Prefecture, tsunami waves of over 4 meters were observed soon after the quake. The agency is warning that the tsunami could reach between 6 and 10 meters. We're getting reports of several buildings on fire. We do not know in regards to the exact amount of damage at this time, but we are soon to get a report from Japan's meteorological agency. They're setting up to find out the extent of the damage. All transportation systems in Tokyo as well as northern Japan has been stopped. Airports closed in Tokyo, Haneda, as well as Narita Airport. A great earthquake has hit Japan. Magnitude 8.4 in northern Japan. Agency has been warning a tsunami ever since the quake, and tsunami has hit the Miyagi Sendai area, as our live helicopter camera crew are up covering and showing you exactly what is going on at this time. Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Tetsuro Fukuyama told reporters on Friday that the governor of Miyagi Prefecture, where the earthquake has hit hardest, has asked the government to send self-defense force units to deal with the situation and aid the situation. Defense Ministry officials say self-defense force personnel are currently contacting local governments and related agencies to assess the extent of the damage. Earlier, Prime Minister Naoto Kan and his cabinet ministers have gathered at the Prime Minister's office, where an emergency task force has been set up to respond to the earthquake. The task force will gather information on damage and prepare for more possible tsunamis. Japan's Foreign Minister Takeaki Matsumoto has ordered his officials to start preparing to accept foreign assistance. He has also told them to check on the safety of foreigners living here in Japan. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center has issued a tsunami warning not just for Japan, but also for Russia, Marcus Island, the Northern Marianas, Guam, Wake Island, and Taiwan. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center has issued a tsunami warning not just for Japan, where a tsunami has already struck, and you can see some of the damages so far in Miyagi Prefecture, northern Japan, and the Sendai area, but also for Russia, Marcus Island, the Northern Marianas, Guam, Wake Island, and Taiwan. For those of you who have just tuned in and living anywhere close to the coastal areas of Russia, Marcus Island, Northern Marianas, Guam, Wake Island, and Taiwan, please do not go near the waters. Move to higher ground as soon as possible. You're watching NHK World, and a major earthquake hit Japan Friday afternoon. This happened about an hour and 20 minutes ago. Japan's meteorological agency says the quake measured magnitude 8.4. The agency has issued a tsunami warning for Japan's Pacific coast. In northern Japan's Iwate Prefecture, tsunami waves of up to 4 meters were observed soon after the quake. The agency is warning that the tsunami could be between 6 and 10 meters. You're seeing some of the tsunami damage so far in Miyagi Prefecture, in the Sendai area, where some of the homes and farms have been flooded when the tsunami went upstream a river. According to the Transport Ministry, Haneda International Airport has reopened 2 of its 4 runways. Haneda International Airport has reopened 2 of its 4 runways. The airport had earlier closed all runways. Haneda International Airport has reopened 2 of its 4 runways. The Japan Road Traffic Information Center and police say expressways around Tokyo and northeastern Japan have been closed. The Japan Road Traffic Information Center and police say expressways around Tokyo and northeastern Japan have been closed. According to Toshiba Elevator, it assumes that most elevators came to a halt in the region affected by the disaster. According to Toshiba Elevator, it assumes that most elevators came to a halt in the region affected by the disaster. At the moment, the company has been collecting information about mechanical troubles. The Industry Minister's Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency has put in place an emergency center for the earthquake. It'll collect information concerning damages caused by the earthquake to nuclear power plants around the country. For those of you who just tuned into NHK World, you're seeing live coverage of Miyagi Prefecture in the Sendai area, where a tsunami has struck. A major earthquake hit Japan on Friday afternoon. Japan's meteorological agency says the quake measured magnitude 8.4. The
All
agency
right,
has issued a
listening there
tsunami
to
warning for Japan's Pacific
NHK
coast.
coverage
Some of
there
that
in
tsunami already
Japan.
hitting
They
areas
keep
like
talking
this
about
one
an
as you see
8.4.
live.
Of course, what we're
The
dealing
under
with here is an
picture, Sunday area where
8.9
tsunami
magnitude
upstream
quake, a great quake. And I want to make the point, too, I've actually received a tweet here from a person who's in Japan. I've asked them and sent them a tweet to ask for their number so we can talk to them. But they're saying frequent aftershocks, the first time in my life in Japan. So this is a traveler, a tourist in Japan who's tweeting to me, and anyone else who is in Japan who wants to send a tweet, please take the time, feel free if it's safe to, at Rosemary CNN. You know, do get online if you can and send a Twitter. But let's go back to these pictures now. I might just get that sound turned down in my ear if you don't mind. It's a little distracting just from the pictures. Thanks so much. Now, we're looking at all of this debris on the ground there, just moving right across Japan, coming from the coastal areas. We see the boats, we see cars, we see mud, all the debris moving through there. Thankfully, a lot of this is farming area, but it is moving into some buildings there, and we saw some ablaze on the ground. I want to go back to Ivan Cabrera, see what additional information Ivan has. What are you finding out? What are you learning now?
Well, we just had another major earthquake offshore of Japan, a 7.1, which would be devastating enough, if certainly shallow enough and closer to the shore. Some of these folks in these farmlands and some of these buildings have no idea what is happening right now. They are perhaps 100+ kilometers away from the shore, and they are seeing on a sunny day in Japan this coming in. I mean, unless you're watching TV, unless you're listening to the radio, you're not going to have any idea what's coming up here. So this is where we get the casualties, where folks not aware of what's coming and not able to reach a higher ground. And so, unfortunately, the tragic thing is we're seeing that wave of mud and debris and buildings and fire just encompass some of those homes there, and we hope they're empty, but certainly some of them probably are not, Rosemary, there. So there you see the initial wave coming in. Also want to keep monitoring, folks in the back, the shoreline, because I wouldn't, again, this has not happened once. So we are talking about a tsunami that comes in, the first initial wave, and then we get another wave and perhaps even a third wave after that. With an 8.9 great earthquake, that shallow, that close to the shore, there are going to be more tsunamis coming in. So we'll have to watch that very closely there. That doesn't look good there. You see the breakers there again, an ongoing threat here. So this is going to be historic indeed.
Indeed, and where people can, and of course it is very difficult, you need to get to higher ground. And any of those countries we've mentioned, any of the coastal areas, you need to move, and you need to move quickly and get to higher ground. I've got Matt Alt on the line now. He's talking to us from Tokyo. He was there, of course, when this earthquake hit, now an 8.9 magnitude quake. Matt, tell us about the situation for you when this magnitude 8.9 hit.
Well, it was absolutely unlike anything I've ever experienced before. I've been living here for 8 years now, and this was quite simply the biggest, longest-lasting earthquake I've ever experienced here.
And that's it, because Kyung-la, our reporter there, was saying that she thought it was 4 to 5 minutes. Was that your sense as well?
Oh, yes. The ground was rolling for an extended period of time. I wasn't exactly sure what to do or where to go. I'd never been prepared for anything like this. My wife and I stood outside and basically held on to the outside of our house. You couldn't even stand up. I mean, literally at the peak of these waves that were washing over the ground, you literally could not stay on your feet. You had to kind of crouch down in a ball or put your back against something so you didn't fall. And that's exactly what we did for the length of the duration of it, which I would say was about probably a minute to 2 minutes. It felt like a lot longer than that, let me tell you.
Indeed. And are you saying that you live there, or that you're actually traveling there?
I actually live here. I've lived here for the last 8 years, and I live on the west side of the city in a little section of Tokyo called Kichijoji. And yes, there are earthquakes from time to time, but we have never, ever felt anything on the magnitude, the literal magnitude of what we experienced today.
And that's exactly the story we hear. Now, Matt, as we are talking, we are looking at this extraordinary wave, another tsunami wave, moving toward the Japanese coast. And where are you located? Are you away from any threat of tsunami coming ashore?
Yes, we're very fortunate to be located quite far inland. Of course, there's some rivers and streams around here, but those aren't being affected by the tsunami. We're I would say, a good 10 to 15 miles away from the coastline, so we don't have to really worry about that where we are. But with the footage that we're seeing, the video that we're seeing on the television screens is just, it's absolutely, it's heart-wrenching, actually, because you know that probably a lot of those people did not have a chance to evacuate before the wave hit, even though they were telling people you need to get away from the shorelines, you need to get away from the water. Just watching this wave hit and cars and buildings and houses being swept away in it, I think we're going to see a significant number of casualties, especially up in the northern part of the country where the quake was epicentered.
And as you mentioned, you've been there for a number of years. I do have to apologize because someone was actually talking in my ear when you mentioned the number of years that you've been there. How long did you say you'd been there?
I've been here for 8 years. My wife is Japanese, and she's lived here most of her life. And I can tell you, this was something neither of us we were completely unprepared for this. It was a beautiful spring day. It was sunny outside. I had just come home from a little errand to the grocery store, and all of a sudden, bam! It just hit, and you could tell this was different instantly from other little tremors that we've had before. I mean, it just picked up in intensity. It ramped up. The gentle shaking, and things started coming off the shelves, things started falling off our desks, and you could hear this strange, eerie creaking sound of all of the buildings all around us as they were kind of shaken by this, by the tremor of the ground. And it was something I hope I never have to hear again, but unfortunately we keep getting aftershocks. We've had 3 or 4 so far, and there's probably going to be other ones as well.
And the reality is, I mean, living in Japan, this is something that you're very used to. But as you say, and of course, as people who've lived there all their lives, they know when this is different, and this felt very different.
It absolutely did. I think this is going to be a tremor to remember, so to speak, and I think people are going to be talking about this for a long time to come, because really, Tokyo hasn't seen anything like this in decades. More than half a century.
Indeed.
Easily.
And Matt, you mentioned your wife is Japanese, so for her, presumably,
yes.
When this quake hit, she was no doubt a little calmer, perhaps, than you were, because she would be used to this situation. What did she say to you?
Absolutely. Well, what the first thing she said was to open up all of the doors and the windows, just in case. Japanese people have been trained for this sort of contingency ever since they were children, because it's just such an earthquake-prone country. The first thing she said was leave the windows and doors open, because just in case the building shifts, you don't want to get trapped when the doors get caught in their door jambs. And then we also brought our shoes in the house with us, which is something that in Japan you never do. You never bring your shoes in with you. But we brought them inside because just in case that there was broken glass or something like that, to be able to get out. And then she was the one who said, get down on the ground, get down in a corner, put your back against something, and wait for the tremors to subside before trying to stand up and walk around so you don't hit your head. So yeah, she was the cool-headed voice of reason during this. I was pretty much running around like a chicken with my head cut off.
The calming influence of a wife, it's very much needed, certainly in a situation like this. So, I mean, as we speak, we are continuing to look at these aerial shots, and we saw that gigantic wave heading again toward the coast. We've probably witnessed in live TV, and all of our global audience and people in the US have witnessed this. We've watched it unfold, which I can't remember a situation where this ever occurred, where you actually see this unfold. And of course, Japan and the journalists there are used to covering these sorts of things. They have their cameras trained on all of these critical shots, like the tsunami waves coming to shore. I don't know if you can talk to some of the pictures we saw a little earlier, but we saw all of this mud and debris with boats and cars moving across a farm area. Now, I don't know if you were able to talk to that at all, but what could you say and tell us about that?
Well, the epicenter of the earthquake, insofar as I understand it, was in a prefecture called Iwate, which is several hundred kilometers north of Tokyo. And I think the footage that we are seeing largely of these waves of debris. It's almost like a monster movie. Just seeing this stuff wiping out entire sections of the coastline is all generally from that area. Also, Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan, is taking a major hit, and we've been seeing a lot of footage of water washing over farmland and other places that are near to the coastline. And there's even been some really heart-wrenching footage of cars racing away from the water. Unfortunately, we don't know if those people made it away or not, but just watching it, it really is almost, it's terrifying. It is really terrifying. And we're getting scattered reports throughout.
Please go on. I mean, I just wanted to make the point. That's what's disturbing about covering this too, because as we look at these pictures, we must not forget that there are people there on the ground when these waves of mud and debris sweep over the land. And this is a big problem. We don't know the casualties at this point, but of course that we will learn a little later, maybe perhaps even hours from now. But Matt, going back to your description, because it's quite extraordinary what you're able to reveal to us as we cover this story.
Well, immediately after the first tremor subsided, we went and we turned on the TV because all of the channels will immediately switch to earthquake coverage, official earthquake coverage when something like this happens. And so everybody was told, you could hear on all the TVs, and they were making announcements on the street over loudspeakers to get away, to evacuate if you're anywhere near water, if you're anywhere near that sort of area, to get away from it. And it is, there were several minutes before the water actually hit. They can predict it with very, very high degree of accuracy. And so there is a good hope, at least I hope, that many of the people who were watching TV and heard about this and know about tsunamis from living in that area were able to evacuate the shorelines. But you can't tell, and when you see things like cars being swept away in the water, is there somebody in there? I mean, that's something certainly that is weighing on all of our minds right now.
And something that struck me, Matt, when I was talking to our reporter Kyung La in Tokyo, was the time, the delay between the earthquake hitting and the final decision to evacuate people from an underground area, from the subways there, which I found striking. Anywhere else, there wouldn't necessarily be that delay and you would move very quickly. Is that because people are so used to earthquakes hitting that it takes them a little while to assess whether this is a deadly one and they need to move quickly?
I think absolutely that Japanese people are more attuned to earthquakes. They're more used to it certainly than I was, where I grew up on the east coast of the United States, where we don't have much in the way of earthquakes. And they tend to take it in stride a little bit more. But this was larger than anyone expected. It went on for longer than anyone expected. And I think there's also a high degree of self-sufficiency among people here, especially with regards to earthquakes. Just as my wife showed, where she was cool-headed and had all of these techniques for dealing with an earthquake hitting, I'm sure that even long before an official announcement to evacuate, people who felt these sort of tremors would absolutely have some sense of what to do and begin to leave the areas. The real danger right now, I believe, is the tsunamis that are hitting. I'm looking at footage right now of Sendai Airport up north, which has been completely inundated. It's completely underwater right now. All of the runways and the buildings are filling with water from what I can see on TV. So this is a major, major, major hit to Japan's infrastructure. I haven't heard anything about what's going on with the subways or anything downtown. I know that they are prone, in some cases, to being filled with water in the event of a tsunami hitting, but I haven't heard any reports of that. But certainly up north, and all of the coastal areas are taking a major, major hit right now.
And Matt, of course, we know, as we've discussed, that the Japanese are very used to these earthquakes. The cities are built